Welcome back to Make It Mondays, and this week I'm working on a new blanket. This one will be available on Patreon, hopefully around the time that this video goes up, probably closer to a week after. I'm using homespun yarn in these two colors, so light blue and a darker gray. And it's going to be Entrelac, so it's going to be worked corner to corner. And it's going to be an uneven entrelac. So I've done that part before. What's going to be different this time is that I'm actually putting a pattern into the larger blocks. So let me get everything turned around and we'll get started. So I've casted on 12 stitches and now it's just knitting. And I'm going to be knitting back and forth, slipping the first stitch of every row past the first row. It's just really hard to slip the first stitch of a cable cast on. But every row from second row on till there's a total of 12 ridges on the right side. Because these little blocks are 12 by 12, and the bigger blocks this time are going to be 26 by 51 rows, which comes out to 26 stitches by 25 ridges. So just going to be working all the way across, back and forth for a while. So I have started the first block and I'm slipping that first stitch and knitting across, and that's how it's going to continue for quite a while. When this block is done, I'm not binding off. I'll be joining the next block and I'll be back when it is time to do that. So now I've casted on all except for the last stitch of the second block, and I'm going to go ahead and purl into the first stitch, the first block, and then turn the work around. And that's just how that first part's going to connect. Slip that stitch and then knit across. And for now, to connect the blocks at this end, it's going to be a purl two together so that the darker color is on the back. So that's how it's going to work for quite a while. I will be back in a bit to show how the pattern block is working. So here I am ready to pick up stitches for the next patterned block. There's the first pattern block done. With the homespun yarn, it is slightly harder to see the pattern, but it is a star pattern like a quilt block. So I'm going to insert my needle into the slip stitch on the edge of the previous block and pick up stitches all the way across. This is part of why the stitches are slipped. You can't do this with doing a standard knit into every stitch. It just makes picking up stitches so that you have to do it on every other row instead of being able to pick it up in a slip stitch. I also happen to just have a hard time doing that consistently with my tension, so I choose to do slip stitch on pretty much anything and everything that I can. There are times where I can't, but most of the time I can. So going all the way down, got a couple more stitches here. Okay, so I'm going to double check my count. So I'm not counting that stitch because that is the last stitch of the previous block. 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 20, 25, and 26. But for this one, I am going to knit into the vertical block as well. And this is the one stitch where things are sometimes a little more difficult, especially given the fact that I'm using fluffy yarn. But part of the reason I use the fluffy yarn is so that I can get a blanket done a lot faster. These blankets do go to charity, and therefore speed is actually something that we do have to worry about. The people who do quilts rather than knitted blankets, knitted or crocheted blankets, can get theirs done in a week or two, maybe if they're going slow. Most of them can get a top done in a day, again, if they're really moving. So for those of us who knit and crochet, having it go a little bit slower means our productivity is lower, but that's part of why we do blankets of all kinds, so that there's a nice wide variety for people to choose from, and we can make enough for the needs to be met. This is also one of the favorite types of yarn to be donated recently, and most other people really hate working with it. So I get a lot of it, and therefore I make lots of blankets that are very soft and squishy and don't take nearly as long for me to knit as the as the ones with worsted weight yarn on size 6 needles. Okay, so I did purl all the way across, slipping that first stitch, so it's a little bit easier. So now we're going to get into the pattern. Now, this is a pattern that is going to be a little hard for me to chart out because it's not fully mine, but I also have not fully found the pattern online, so still trying to find a way to give credit where credit is due. If I do find it, then the full chart from the original website will be linked in the pattern on Patreon. If I can't find it, you'll get my chart with a credit unknown tag underneath it. 11, 12, 13. So it's purling 13 across and then knitting 5, purling 1, knitting 1. And I'm actually going to double check that count. 8, 10, 12, 13, yes. But then the numbers change to make the diagonals. Again, in this yarn, it's a little harder to see, but there's a parallelogram here and here. So there's 8 of them that go around to make the star. But again, I'm doing it with purl stitches. If you are interested in the pattern, please leave a comment saying if you'd like it as a chart or you'd like it just written out of the stitch counts and so on. I did something wrong. There it is. Okay. So when I do have to back up because I wasn't counting, that is actually all I do is I pull the stitches off and I pull it back while pinching the stitches I don't want to drop. So I missed knitting a stitch that should have been a knit. I'm not worried about this yarn not cooperating, so pulling out super far because it is grippy. Okay. And at this point, instead of knitting this one, so I want the seam to be on the back, I'm going to go into the first stitch, go in through the back of the second stitch, and purl through both. That makes the seam. So I'm going to finish this block, and I'm actually going to finish probably the rest of the blanket before I come back, and I will see you in a bit to show you how it all looks. And here is the final blanket. So the pattern within the big squares is a little subtle, but it is able to be seen. And then everything else was garter stitch, regular garter stitch. This pattern will be available on Patreon for at the membership level, which is $5, or you can buy the individual post for $5. Membership is $5 per month. It's not ready quite yet, but hopefully within about a week. And if you've made it this far, whether you want to do these projects or not, consider dropping the video a like. If you want to see more, hit subscribe, possibly even the notification bell, and I will see you next time on Make It Mondays. Bye.